Hey fam. I sometimes have people ask me why I won't date. So I'm not going to get into complete detail about the reasons for that, but I am going to explain, I think, just enough that maybe it will start to make sense. So I was put in a very bad financial position because of the fraudulent actions of several people. It ended up putting me in a situation where I was forced to do extremely hard labor on a daily basis for a little over 2 years. And during that period of time, back in September of this year, I got a serious injury, and I have not fully recovered from that injury to my body. And then during my recovery period, which is still an ongoing process, I sustained another injury. And what occurred to me during that time is that if there was a single person on God's green earth that really cared about my health and well-being, they would have showed up long before now, and they would have taken some of that burden from me. So what became abundantly clear to me during that process is that I don't think I've ever interacted with a man who actually was willing to put his actions and words in alignment. I think I've met several men that were capable of talking a good game, but their words and actions were never in alignment. And what I've learned through this process is that if I believe somebody's rhetoric and their actions are not in alignment, then I have no one to blame but myself if I end up in a situation where I get used. And so, rather than ever again put myself in that possible scenario, I've opted out completely. I firmly believe that if there was somebody out there that was meant to be my partner, they never would have sat idly by and watched me get injured to the extent that I was and still am. So, with that knowledge, I have chosen to move forward in the way that, I don't know how else to say it, in the way that I see most men moving. And the way that most men move is they look out for number one. And if somebody gets injured in the process of the way that they move, it's been my personal experience that collateral damage just gets tossed aside. So, I will say this: I'm not willing to do that to someone. And because I don't consider myself to be a selfish person when it comes to relationships willing to do that to someone, I will never again be in a relationship. And this will prevent me being perceived by any potential partner as being solely focused on myself. I certainly can't be perceived that way if I refuse to get into a relationship with anyone. I realize that this concept might be difficult for some people to understand. But if you look at the statistics of what happens to women who become terminally ill, you'd be shocked to learn that in many of those cases, and in many more of those cases than vice versa, when it's a man that's terminally ill, the women that are terminally ill or chronically ill end up being left in that process. Many of them. And many more women in a chronically ill situation are left than men are left in a similar dynamic. Now, you could say that's because women by nature are more nurturing, more empathetic, more compassionate, whatever logic and reasoning you want to slap on that scenario, feel free to do so. But what that statistic has taught me is that for better, for worse, in richer or poor, in sickness and in health, really only seems to go one direction. Doesn't really seem that that rhetoric and those actions are in alignment if it is the woman who becomes poor, sick, etc. Now, perhaps there would be more loyalty to the female partner in a situation like that if those words, those vows and actions were in alignment. But in my experience, they are not. And in a very similar way that you could say that that is a breach of contract, I would say that if those actions and words are not in alignment, that constitutes broken vows, breach of contract, abandonment, any number of things you could label it. And therefore, I'm just moving accordingly. It makes absolutely no sense for me to continue to put my life on hold, waiting for someone to realize the error of their ways. Ultimately, I cannot force someone to reach a level of enlightenment required to realize that their neglect is completely inexcusable. I hope that this message will make sense to people. I hope that to the ladies out there, if you are being treated like an afterthought on a regular basis, I hope that perhaps this video will give you the necessary clarity to stop allowing that and to stop facilitating that if you have been. Because you are divine and you are deserving of so much more than you are tolerating. I hope that you have a blessed Sunday. God bless you all. I wish you all the best. Have a good evening.